When my parents handed over the house I had been paying for to my younger brother as a wedding gift, I thought that was the worst betrayal I would ever experience. I was wrong. 2 months later, they tried to take my vacation home too. And when I refused, let's just say I never expected to get a call from the police about my own family breaking in. Ryan and I pulled into the packed parking lot of the country club where my younger brother, Jason, was about to marry the love of his life. The afternoon sun gleamed off luxury cars, the venue buzzing with guests dressed in their finest attire. In the passenger seat, I adjusted the envelope in my lap. Inside was a crisp $10,000 check, our wedding gift to Jason and his fiancée, Claire. A generous sum, but it wasn't even close to what we had already spent covering nearly a third of the wedding expenses. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You okay?" I forced a smile. Of course, it's a happy day. And it was, or at least it was supposed to be. As we stepped inside, the reception hall buzzed with energy. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over elegantly set tables, the air filled with soft classical music. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests with beaming smiles. Mom, in a sleek navy blue gown, fussed over Dad's tie while he feigned annoyance, though the unmistakable glimmer of joy danced in his eyes. They looked radiant, and that's when the first stab of unease hit me. I had seen them happy before, but never like this. Not even at my wedding 5 years ago. Back then, they had smiled, they had been pleasant. But they hadn't glowed with pride the way they did now. The thought settled uneasily in my chest, but I pushed it aside. Today wasn't about me. The ceremony unfolded like a scene from a fairy tale. Claire floated down the aisle in a dress that shimmered like spun gold. Jason standing at the altar, eyes locked on her like she was the only thing in the world. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dad stood tall, chest puffed with pride. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And then came the reception. We drank, we danced, we laughed. The energy in the room was electric, a celebration in every sense of the word. When the time came for speeches, the best man cracked jokes. The maid of honor gushed about childhood memories. Then, my parents took the stage together, and the moment the microphone crackled to life, I should have known something was coming. Mom smiled, scanning the crowd. "We want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our beloved son's wedding." Something about the way she emphasized beloved made my stomach twist. Dad took over, his voice thick with emotion. "Watching Jason grow into the man he is today has been one of our greatest joys. He has always been special, always brought so much light into our lives." Ryan, seated beside me, noticed my grip tightening on my champagne glass. He placed his hand over mine, grounding me. "And so," Mom continued, her voice trembling with excitement, "we wanted to give Jason and Claire something to help them start their new life together. Something meaningful." She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. "We are gifting them our family home." The room erupted in gasps, then thunderous applause. Cheers, whistles, clinking glasses. The air filled with joyous celebration. And I froze. Beside me, Ryan stiffened. My ears rang. My heart pounded against my ribs. I turned to my parents, waiting, hoping for someone to laugh, to say this was some elaborate joke. But they weren't joking. They were beaming. And Jason, he wasn't surprised at all. My younger brother sat at the head of the table, grinning as if this had all been planned for months. Claire clutched his arm, tears of happiness spilling down her cheeks. My mind raced. The house I had been paying for. The house I had covered the mortgage on every single month for 5 years after Dad's hours got cut, and Mom's arthritis forced her into part-time work. They never once mentioned this to me. Not once. My chest felt tight, my vision tunneling as I forced a smile, clapping along with everyone else. My body went through the motions, but inside, I was screaming. Ryan leaned in. "Emily, are you?" "I'm fine," I whispered, my voice hollow. I wasn't fine. I was furious. An hour later, I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me, suffocating. I found Ryan by the bar and whispered, "Can we leave?" He studied my face for a moment before nodding. "I'll grab our coats." We made our rounds, offering congratulations, making polite excuses about an early morning meeting. No one questioned it. We slipped out into the cool night air, the sounds of laughter and music fading behind us. The moment we got into the car, the dam broke. Tears spilled down my cheeks as the truth crashed over me. "I can't believe they did that," I choked out. "I paid that mortgage for 5 years, Ryan. 5. And they never even told me they were planning this." Ryan's jaw clenched. "It's disgusting. And Jason knew." My voice shook with betrayal. He knew, and he didn't say a word. He just sat there, smiling like he deserved it. Ryan exhaled sharply, his grip tightening on the wheel. "This isn't about the money, is it?" "No," I whispered. "It's about respect. About them not even asking me. Like I didn't matter." The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. As we drove home, memories flickered in my mind. Memories of a lifetime of favoritism. The time I graduated college and got a $50 bill in a card, while Jason got a brand new car when he graduated. The birthday dinner my parents skipped because Jason had a volleyball game. The way they bragged endlessly about Jason's achievements but barely acknowledged mine. I had spent years telling myself it didn't matter, that it wasn't worth fighting over. But this was the final straw. And the worst part? Something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, sleep was impossible. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying every detail of the betrayal I had just witnessed. My parents, smiling as they handed over the house I had paid for. Jason, sitting there like a king receiving his rightful throne. Claire, wiping away happy tears as if this was the most beautiful moment of her life. And me, frozen, trapped in a nightmare disguised as a wedding celebration. By morning, my emotions had sharpened into something cold and unrelenting. I needed answers. I needed to hear them say it out loud, why they had done this without telling me. I grabbed my keys, drove straight to my parents' house. No, Jason's house now, and walked through the front door. Jason was sprawled on the couch, feet up like he had lived there forever. Claire sat beside him, sipping coffee, her manicured nails tapping against the mug. My mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred her tea, the picture of a woman completely unbothered. She glanced up at me. "Emily, I was just about to call you. You left so suddenly last night." I ignored the casual greeting. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was steady, but I could feel the fury bubbling beneath. She blinked. "Tell you what, dear?" I clenched my jaw. "That you were giving Jason the house. The house I've been paying for." A heavy silence settled over the room. Then my mother let out a sigh and shrugged. "Emily, you have a wonderful life. A good career, a loving husband, financial security. Jason is just starting out. He needed this." I let out a hollow laugh. "So, because I worked hard and built a stable life, I don't deserve the basic decency of a conversation? I wasn't even worth a heads up." Jason scoffed from the couch. "Come on, Emily. It's not like you're homeless. You have your own place. Claire and I are starting a family. We needed this house more than you did." I turned slowly, my blood boiling. "You needed it? And I guess I was just, what? A sponsor? A donor? Was I just supposed to keep paying and then politely hand over the keys?" Claire set her coffee cup down, rolling her eyes. "Emily, you're overreacting. It's just a house." I laughed, but it wasn't out of amusement. "No, Claire, it's not just a house. It's 5 years of my life. 5 years of overtime shifts, of missed vacations, of budgeting every month to make sure this place stayed afloat. And instead of acknowledging that, my parents just gave it away. Not even to a stranger, to someone who knew and still took it." My mother sighed. "Families help each other, sweetheart." I stared at her, the weight of a lifetime of unfairness pressing down on me. "No, Mom. I help. Jason takes. That's how it's always been." Jason rolled his eyes. "Jesus, Emily. Do you want money or something? Will that make you feel better?" The audacity of it nearly made me dizzy. "You think this is about money? It's about respect. It's about knowing that, in this family, I have never, not once, been considered as important as you." My father, silent up until now, finally spoke. Emily, it's done. There's no point in arguing. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Fine. If it's done, then I'm done too. No more support. No more money. No more favors. The shift in my mother's expression was immediate. Emily, you can't mean that. Oh, I do. My voice was steel. I've carried this family financially for years, and I never once complained. But this was the final straw. I turned on my heel and walked out, ignoring the calls behind me. Ryan was waiting in the car, his face tight with worry. I slid into the passenger seat, staring out the window, trying to process the overwhelming sense of loss. You okay? He asked softly. I shook my head. No, but I will be. For the next few days, I ignored the texts and calls. I threw myself into work, into anything that could distract me. But the anger never really left. It simmered beneath the surface, a constant reminder that I had been discarded like an afterthought. Then, a week later, my mother called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emily, sweetheart, she began, her voice smooth, as if nothing had happened. Your father and I wanted to talk to you about something important. I closed my eyes. What is it? She hesitated, then said in an almost casual tone, We've decided to move into your vacation home. I sat up. What? We gave Jason the house, so we need a place to stay, she explained, as if this was the most logical conclusion in the world. Your vacation home is perfect for us. I felt a sharp, cold anger settle in my chest. Mom, that's my house. She sighed, like I was being difficult. Emily, you hardly use it. It's just sitting there. It would be better if it had people living in it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You mean it would be better for you? Just like with the house, you made a decision and expected me to accept it. Emily, don't be selfish, she chided. We're family. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Now you want to talk about family? After what you did? The answer is no. Absolutely not. Her voice sharpened. You can't just refuse, Emily. Oh, I can. And I just did. I hung up before she could say another word, my hands shaking. Ryan, who had overheard the conversation, walked over. Let me guess, he said dryly. They want the vacation house? I nodded, letting out a shaky breath. They didn't ask. They just decided. Ryan sighed, wrapping his arms around me. You know they won't let this go, right? I swallowed hard. Yeah, I know. Before we continue the story, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. I thought refusing them would end it. I thought they would finally understand my boundaries. I was wrong. I never expected them to take things even further. But when the security company called me a few weeks later, I realized just how far they were willing to go. 2 weeks passed in uneasy silence. My parents had always been persistent, but this time they seemed to have backed off. No calls, no texts, nothing. A part of me wanted to believe they had finally accepted my answer, but deep down I knew better. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the moment I answered, my stomach dropped. Miss Carter? This is Officer Reynolds from Pine Ridge Security. We've detected unauthorized entry at your vacation property. The front door was opened with a key, but the alarm was triggered when it wasn't disabled properly. Are you expecting anyone there today? My grip tightened around the phone. No, no one should be there. There was a pause on the other end. Well, we have 2 individuals on site who claim to be your parents. They say they're moving in. My blood ran cold. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to stay calm. They do not have permission to be there. Please send the police immediately. Ryan had been working in the next room, but he must have seen my expression because he was at my side in an instant. What happened? They broke in? I whispered, barely able to get the words out. They're in my house. Ryan didn't waste a second. We're going up there. Now. The drive to my vacation home was a blur of fury and disbelief. My mind raced with questions. How did they get a key? Had they made a copy at some point? Did they really think they could just take over my house, the same way they had given Jason the other one? By the time we pulled up, 2 police officers were already there, standing on the porch with my parents. Several suitcases and boxes were stacked near the doorway, like they had been planning to move in permanently. My father stood with his arms crossed, his face dark with frustration. My mother, however, had the audacity to look wounded, as if I was the one betraying her. As soon as she saw me step out of the car, she rushed forward. "Emily, thank goodness you're here. There's been a misunderstanding." I cut her off, my voice ice cold. "No, Mom, there is no misunderstanding. You broke into my house." My father's expression tightened. "We used the key you gave us. For emergencies," I snapped. "And you didn't just let yourselves in, you brought luggage. You were planning to move in without my permission." One of the officers stepped forward. "Miss Carter, would you like to press charges?" My mother gasped. "You wouldn't. We're your parents." I turned to her, anger burning through every nerve in my body. "You didn't care about that when you handed Jason my house, did you? You didn't care about that when you decided for me that I was going to house you. Now you want to use family as an excuse." My mother's eyes welled with tears. "We didn't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "You had a house. You gave it away. That was your decision." My father clenched his jaw. "Jason and Claire need that house. They're young. They're starting a family. And I'm what? Disposable?" My voice shook. "I have given to this family my entire life. I have sacrificed my time, my money, and my energy to help you. But this was the last straw." My mother's face twisted with desperation. "Emily, please. We thought you would understand." "No." I cut her off. "You thought I would roll over like I always have. You thought I would let you take from me again. But you were wrong." The officer glanced between us. "So, Miss Carter, how would you like to proceed?" I hesitated. I wanted them out, I needed them out. But pressing charges felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for. I took a deep breath. "I won't press charges. But I want them gone. Right now. And I want a formal warning issued. If they ever step foot on my property again, I will take legal action." The officers nodded. "Understood." My mother sobbed. "Emily, don't do this. We're your parents." I met her gaze, feeling nothing but exhaustion. "No. You're just 2 people who took me for granted." The officers escorted them off the property. As my parents got into their car, my mother cast one last tearful look at me, as if hoping I would change my mind. I didn't. As soon as they were gone, Ryan turned to me. "Are you okay?" I let out a shaky breath. "I don't know." The locksmith arrived within the hour. I had every lock changed and the alarm system upgraded. I even had the spare key I'd given my parents deactivated, just in case they had secretly made more copies. Ryan and I spent the rest of the evening packing up their belongings and arranging for them to be sent to a storage unit, one I had no intention of paying for after the first month. As we drove home, the weight of it all settled on my chest. "They're going to hate me for this," I murmured. Ryan's grip on my hand tightened. "If standing up for yourself makes them hate you, then they never really loved you in the first place." I nodded, but the ache in my chest didn't fade. I should have known it wouldn't end there. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives. My mother had taken to social media, posting a dramatic story about how I had thrown my elderly parents out onto the street with nowhere to go. Dozens of comments poured in, some sympathetic, others outright condemning me. "How could you do this to the people who raised you? They gave you life, and this is how you repay them?" I scrolled through, my stomach churning. They had twisted the story to make me the villain, conveniently leaving out the part where they had stolen my house and then tried to take my vacation home too. Ryan, reading over my shoulder, sighed. "Are you going to respond?" I hesitated. Then finally I nodded. If they wanted to play this game, then it was time for the world to hear my side of the story. By the time I sat down to write my response, my hands were steady. The anger that had once burned inside me had cooled into something sharper, something more resolute. I wasn't going to let my parents rewrite the truth. Their post had already gone viral among family and friends. My mother had painted herself as a helpless woman, thrown out onto the streets by her ungrateful daughter who had refused to help after everything they had done for me. Dozens of comments poured in, mostly in their favor. How could she do this to you? After all you sacrificed for her. Disgusting. Some kids just don't appreciate their parents. Reading those words made my stomach turn. But what hurt the most was seeing my aunts, uncles, even old family friends chiming in, completely convinced that I was some heartless villain. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew that I had spent 5 years paying for a house that had never even been mine. None of them knew that my parents had tried to take my vacation home the moment they realized they had nowhere to go. So I told them. I took a deep breath and started typing. I have stayed silent about family matters for a long time, but since my mother has chosen to share her version of the story with the world, it's time I share mine. Here are the facts. I laid it all out, every ugly detail. How my parents had struggled financially, and I had stepped in, covering the mortgage on their home for 5 years without hesitation. How they had never once told me they planned to give it to Jason and had announced it at his wedding as though I didn't exist. How they had expected me to continue supporting them financially while treating me like an afterthought. And then, I dropped the final bombshell. How they had tried to take over my vacation home without permission, going so far as to break in with a spare key they weren't supposed to use. How the police had to remove them because they refused to leave. So before you send me another message calling me selfish or ungrateful, ask yourself this. Would you be okay with your family taking everything from you and expecting you to smile through it? Would you be okay with being treated like an ATM instead of a daughter? I hit post before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate. The same people who had been so quick to condemn me were now silent. Others, those who had hesitated before, suddenly found their voices. Wait. You were paying for their house this whole time? And they gave it away without telling you? They broke into your vacation home? And they're mad you called the cops? Wow, your parents just expected you to fund their entire lives while treating you like nothing. Good for you for standing up for yourself. The tide shifted. For every comment defending my parents, 10 others called out their entitlement. Old friends and distant relatives messaged me privately, some apologizing for believing the lies, others sharing their own stories of family manipulation. And then, the inevitable happened. Jason messaged me. Hope you're happy. You made Mom cry. She says she's never been more ashamed of you. I stared at the screen, a strange calm settling over me. She's ashamed? Because I told the truth. I typed back. Tell her I learned from the best. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked his number. I blocked my parents' numbers too. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But the story didn't end there. A week later, I got a call from my cousin Rachel. You're not going to believe this, she said, barely containing her laughter. Jason kicked them out. I nearly dropped my phone. What? They tried moving in with him after you refused to let them take your vacation home. But Claire wasn't having it. She told them this was their house now and they needed privacy. They had an argument, and Jason basically told them to find somewhere else to live. I blinked, absorbing the irony of it all. So let me get this straight. They gave Jason the house I paid for, and he kicked them out. Yep, they're renting a tiny apartment now, and your mom had to go back to work full-time to afford it. I exhaled slowly. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. Ryan found me sitting at the kitchen table later that night, staring at my phone. You okay? I nodded. I think so. It's just, I spent so long trying to earn their love, their approval. And now I realize it was never really there. They only valued me for what I could give them. He pulled me into his arms, kissing my forehead. And now you can stop giving to people who don't deserve it. For the first time in years, I truly believed that. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about boundaries. It's about learning that just because someone is family doesn't mean they have the right to take advantage of you. It's about choosing yourself over toxic loyalty. Because at the end of the day, family should be built on love and respect, not obligation and manipulation. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Comment 2 if you agree with my decision, or 7 if you think I should have handled things differently. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe to Mr. Heart Vibes, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Because trust me, there's always another story waiting to be told.